So far, we've mostly been looking at the external aspect of the houses. Now let's step inside. In many ways, the interior of a house can actually tell us more than its exterior. It can reveal daily habits, social structures, and even economic conditions. To summarize Broder's argument, in poor civilizations or poor societies, especially outside Europe, the interiors of homes changed very little over long periods of time. But in Western Europe, the inside of house was constantly evolving, and Broder sees this continuous change as kind of rulers' privilege, the privilege of those who economically dominated the world. However, we should keep in mind that poor regions of Europe and poor European themselves lived in conditions very similar to those in non-European societies, like see in the picture. For the poor, there was simply nothing to change because they owned so little to begin with. In both the countryside and the cities of Western Europe, the poor lived in extreme poverty. Before the 18th century, most homes had no furniture at all, or only the bare minimum. It was only in the 18th century that basic household items, including something as simple as chairs, began to spread more widely. This is the um uh, um we can if we look at paintings from the period that depicts pigeon life, we can get a fairly good sense of how pigeons lived, especially what the interiors of their homes looked like. And they sit at simple chairs without armrests, and sometimes even on chairs made by cutting a wine barrel in half, like this. This is common chair for the pigeon in that era. In this particular scene, it looks like a special day, a party or feast. So the people are cheerful and drinking wine, maybe, and enjoying music. Yeah, one of them is playing a violin, right? The setting itself doesn't appear to be anything grand, anything good. It's probably just the inside of a farmer's house. And you can see the children present and the fire they are using isn't a former fireplace. It's simply an open doors fire, something very common in modest rural homes. Uh, and there's no furniture at all except table and chairs. And these pictures also depicts the lives of the ordinary people, and you can see just a table and chairs, right? And there's no fireplace. Mm. And and what we see in these scenes has a few things in common. There's no real fireplace yet, so people either make a fire direct on the floor, like this, and or a cooking space that's technically indoors, but still feels almost being outside. The chairs have no armrest, and the barrel cut chairs like this. Yes, yeah, they stand out aside from the table, a few chairs, and maybe a couple of jars and pots. There's almost no other furniture visible in the room. Um, Scenes like these were everyday reality for a large portion of the population. Poverty was widespread everywhere. Uh, according to court records from the Burgundian regions, many rural cottages in the 16th and 17th centuries looked exactly like this. Behind the thin partition, a pig might be kept, and there's no real bed or furniture, so people slept on piles of straw. A simple cooking pot hung over the fire. The table was rough and plain, and the chairs were often just wine barrels cut in half. Records mention people living in these conditions like this over and over again. Compared to this, what about the like this one? Um, in the first major characteristic of European domestic life in this period is that people own very little. Then the second characteristic found mainly among the upper classes is that the people remained very faithful to familiar styles and decorations. Brodel doesn't go into much detail about this. Instead, he re- he turns to examples from non-European civilizations, and one noteworthy point is that, with the exception of China, most non-European society has had very little furniture. Some regions use low tables, like these low tables, but in place like India, there's no tables at all, no chairs at all. However, in certain areas in the European society actually had better solutions to housing and domestic life than Europe did. For example, the Islamic public bath and the clean, orderly structure of Japanese houses like this. Um, Japanese houses looked good, but when it comes to heating, Japanese houses had a serious weakness. Uh, this is called irori, the traditional heating method, involving cutting out a square section of the floor, filling it with ash, and keeping a fire there for cooking and warmth. In the cold winter, this doesn't much different from sleeping outside next to a campfire. And, and this is called kotatsu as another example, a heating device that uses a built-in hearth. In modern versions, the hearth is replaced by an electric heater attached on the row table with a blanket draped over it, basically a blanket table. The problem is that the rest of the house stays cold, especially for elderly people. Moving from warm cottage to a freezing hallway at night can cause a sudden temperature shock, and there are many cases of people dying from that shock. In Japan, it says that ordinary houses are built with almost no insulation. From early on, people preferred wooden structures which could respond more flexibly to natural disasters like earthquakes and typhoons. So the construction favored lightness and flexibility over heavy insulated heat retaining designs. This one is called the Chinese one. In China, there is the traditional Kang. a raised, heated platform used to escape the winter cold. It, it's also where guests are received for tea and where women sit and no do needlework. For Koreans, we have like the like heating system called ondol. Ondol system is a structure that the entire floor of the house heats the entire floor. You light a fire in the kitchen, like here in here, um, for cooking or heating water, and the heat generated there is directed through the channels here like this under the floor, warming the whole house from beneath. Anyway, so I love the under system, and it is it has been changed into modern system. On every apartment in Korea has just like using water, yeah, heated water um, flows across the all the floors of the houses, and it makes feel more comfortable and warm. Anyway, um, but it needs more the energy sources, right? How about this? This is on in studies of domestic interiors, China is exceptional because it uses both armatures and tables together as part of everyday life. Even though Japan imported the many elements of China cultures, especially during the Tang, Tang Dynasty, the table and chair system never really spread there. Instead, the Japanese continued to use floor level seating, and Korea followed a similar pattern. China, however, is unusual because it used both this system at the same time. Yeah, the high level seating and floor level seating. They adopted the new ways of living without abandoning the older traditions. In that sense, Chinese domestic culture has dual or layered. And then there's an interesting story. In the 18th century, at the end of 18th century, when a member of the Dutch embassy visited Beijing, he founded a table and chair seating like this uncomfortable. So in response, his host simply led him to another sitting area with different kinds of chairs. This illustrates what you might call the double pattern of Chinese furniture. China maintained two parallel systems of interior furnishings, a feature that set it apart not only from Europe but from every other major civilizations as well, floor sitting level. In this sense, China is truly exceptional. In any case, it's significant that only in China do we find these two systems of furniture coexisting. However, Brodel does not offer an explanation for why these two forms coexisted. When he discusses the origins of chair seating in Europe, it simply notes that to understand it properly, we would have to trace it all the way back to ancient Western civilization. Chairs may be Chairs may have been introduced into China a long time ago, but it took a very long time for them to be adopted on a broad popular level. By contrast, Western Europe changes much more quickly. In that sense, Western Europe shows its own kind of originality as well. In the 15th century, the interiors of a house is like this, and like this is uh, yeah. by Rohir van der Weyden. It's the description of the biblical story about noticing the birth of Jesus to Mary. But anyway, we are not interested in the story, but our point is about the interiors in this room. So we can see uh, like like the bed and the vase and the long chairs and the carpet and things like that. It's so fancy, right? It looks good, and the color of red is um outstanding. How about this? It's similar to the previous one, right? The round table and long chair. Yeah. Anyway, the fireplace. Yeah. And this one, compared to these two, the third one is more like spacious, right? And like and the bed and the vase on on the bed is quite clearly high, right? This scene from the 15th century gives a good sense of the atmosphere of a living room. The furniture, the tables, and even clothing of the period. This so-called late Gothic interior shows us what luxury looked like at the time. Curtains, bed covers, wall hangings, and silk cushions all create a richly decorated setting. And over the next 2 centuries, living rooms became larger and ceilings grew higher, and the interiors became more open and spacious. But even all with all these luxury items, the reality remained the same. Heating was still poor, and there's no real privacy whatsoever. And even though interior decorations and furniture became more developed, the luxury of this period still had clear limits, weakness by modern standards. Heating and ventilation were poor, and people still emptied their chamber pots out the window. Do you know what it is, right? Chamber pot. Like turning, yeah, they like the poops, um, and yeah, through the night, and they kept like we Koreans had that kind of tradition because we didn't have the restroom inside, so at night, especially in winter season, we needed to go outside to reserve our natural course. Uh, so at night, especially the upper class people use the yeah, this one not just lower classes people use the as well like the chamber parts. That's a good term. And so in the morning, yeah, they empty the this chamber parts. But in the case of the Middle European cities, they pour out on on the street. So just think of like like the picture shows and so ditches and the every street is was like filthy and full of poo-poos. And so in that sense, um in terms of hygienes, uh, the this area like the 18th century, it's not that luxury. So lighting relied on candles and oil lamps. So if like any one of us were to step into a home from this period, yeah, would probably find it quite uncomfortable. Luxury, yeah, from our perspective, it cannot be called as a luxury. And canals, ditches, and rivers were full of filth, and public bathhouses was so rare. The bathing itself was considered a luxury. But just to think of our modern day, we uh, every single apartment has like a bath tube, and we can wash our bodies every day, right? That's that can be called luxury, from the modern people's perspective. All right, this is the end of the session two, and I come back and we will talk about the costumes and fashion.